How's it going, everyone? I'm Andrew Robson. You're watching RAKUYO's Deciduous Bonsai channel. And in today's video, we're going to talk about how to keep your bonsai safe in winter storms. Now, if you look behind me, we have an empty bonsai garden, or so it seems. Most of the bonsai have come off the benches and are being protected because we have an Arctic blast coming down from the north that is going to make frigid, unseasonably cold temperatures here in Portland, Oregon, where RAKUYO is located. And I'm going to tell you all the tricks and tips that we do to keep bonsai safe during winter storms in this video. Now, the first thing that you need to know is that sensitive species, or trees that come from climates that don't get bitter cold, these sensitive species need to be protected when we have a cold snap. They can't just stay outside. So sensitive species might be pomegranates or crepe myrtles in a deciduous garden. If you have some broadleaf evergreens like olives or cork oaks, those can be a little sensitive. If you have conifers, things like coastal redwoods or Japanese black pines, they can be sensitive. So anything that doesn't come from a climate that's mountainous, that's getting bitter cold, more Mediterranean type plants, these are plants that are sensitive species and they need some protection. So protect sensitive species by either moving them in a greenhouse, in a heated or unheated garage, or just inside for a few days if you don't have those options available for you. Now, the next thing that you need to know is that shohin, or anything in a small pot, needs to be protected during these cold storms. Now, this is a Japanese maple, and Japanese maple is incredibly cold tolerant. This is one of the most cold tolerant deciduous trees that we have in deciduous bonsai. And even a Japanese maple like this, with an Arctic blast or a very cold storm coming down, this is a tree that needs to be protected even though its species otherwise might not need to. Because it's a shohin, because it's in such a small pot and all of that soil is contained in a small space, it needs protection regardless of the species that it is. So all of your shohin or small pots, things that are easy to pick up with one or two hands, those are trees that ideally should be protected in winter storms. Again, those can go either into a greenhouse or a heated or unheated garage, or even inside if you don't have those options available to you. Now, the last thing that you need to know about things to protect are anything that's actively growing. If you have a amber maple that has buds swelling and is about to wake up, or a chochobai flowering quince which is waking up, or you have an ume which has flower buds that are about to explode. These plants tend to wake up early, and so if you have them waking up, they absolutely need protection. Anything that has active growth on it cannot be exposed to freezes or frost. Otherwise, you'll get pretty bad damage. So those trees also need to get moved to protection and cannot stay out in sub-freezing temperatures. Now, those are the different types of plants: sensitive species, shohin or small trees, and things that are actively growing. Those are ones that absolutely need protection. Now let's talk about the different modes of protection that you can provide bonsai to get through winter safely. So we're going to use this beautiful Katsura as our model for the different levels of protection that you can provide your bonsai. Now, left alone on the bench, this is the absolute worst protection because it is no protection. If you get a very dramatic cold storm coming in, a bench is not going to give you anything. Now, on the bench here, you can think of this bench like a bridge. If you read those signs when you're driving on the highway that says bridge ices over or bridge freezes over, you know, that's because that cold air is coming in underneath the bridge, and we have that same thing on a bench. With a bench, the cold air can come from underneath and keep this bonsai basically the same temperature as the air, which is not what we want when we have a frigid Arctic blast. So this bench here is the absolute worst protection and not advisable for when you have a winter storm. Now, when this was on the bench, it was essentially the air temperature. And when we take it off of the bench and put it on the ground, we are adding about a 5 to 7 degree benefit to the tree, 5 to 7 degrees warmer, because it's no longer the air temperature, it is now getting heat from the ground. And if you especially take the time to wiggle this into place so that it is in perfect contact, not just the feet, but the bottom of the pot are in perfect contact, then that will really help give it that extra boost from the ground heat. Now, another thing we can do is if you have gravel like what we have here at RAKUYO, you can take a rake and push gravel up against the sides of the pot so it kind of looks like it's buried, and that will prevent wind from getting underneath. That will keep the tree nice and insulated when it's on the ground. The other thing that's great about on the ground is that if you get a cold storm in combination with your Arctic blast, that cold storm comes down, that blanket of snow is an insulator, and that will just trap that earth heat even more, so you'll get even more of a benefit. And so on the ground, at the bare minimum, is the best way to protect bonsai. Now, if for some reason you have a tree that is too heavy to move or unsafe to move, and it absolutely has to stay outside in its current location, then one trick to keep it safe is to wrap a wool blanket around it, or multiple wool blankets around it. And that can actually add and keep the wind off of it and add a few more temperatures of warmth to your plant. So if you can't move something to the ground, go ahead and throw a wool blanket on it, because sometimes you just have trees that are way too big and you really risk harming your body by moving them. So a wool blanket is a really good trick for that. Now, one step better than having it on the ground is by either bringing it into a heated or unheated garage, or bringing it into a greenhouse. And this is going to give you the extra benefit of not being exposed to winds, while also being able to add temperature control. You can use an unheated garage until it gets too cold in there, and then maybe you heat your garage, or same thing with the greenhouse. You can unheat the greenhouse, and then once the temperature is getting below where you want it, you can use heat to bring it back up. And so the best protection is either in a greenhouse like this, or an unheated garage, or a heated garage, because that really allows you to modify the temperature and block it from these cold Arctic winds. So those are the two best places. Now, if you don't have a garage, or if you don't have a greenhouse, and putting it outside on the ground isn't going to cut it, it's okay to bring a tree inside for 2 or 3 or 4 days. That's less harm to it than it is putting it outside to weather the storm. So if you absolutely need to, you can always use inside the house as a last resort. Another thing to keep in mind is hydration before and after winter storms. Now, freezes and frost can be desiccating to bonsai, especially if they are at those cold temperatures for a very long time. So whenever there is a cold storm coming in, I always make sure to hydrate the bonsai the day before it freezes and the day that they thaw, so that they are not lacking any moisture in the pots. I actually think more bonsai die from lack of moisture than actual cold temperatures in the wintertime, because, you know, if you have your trees kind of tucked in a greenhouse and they freeze and then they thaw, you might not be able to get to everything, and that can be really desiccating the plants. So make sure that you are hydrating bonsai before and after the big winter storm comes. Now, any bonsai that are absolutely special to you, even if they're not a shohin, even if they're not a sensitive species, even if they don't necessarily need that protection, anything that's really special to you is worth protecting regardless. So this is my winter hazel that recently won Best Deciduous at the 2022 Pacific Bonsai Expo in Oakland, California. And this tree is so special to me. It's one of my favorite trees. I would be absolutely heartbroken if anything happened to it. And so even though it could probably weather the storm just fine outside on the ground, we went ahead and brought it into the studio here so that it has the best odds for protection. So anything that's really, really valuable to you, you probably want to go ahead and give it the best protection possible, regardless of if it really needs it or not. So thanks for checking out this video. I hope you found it helpful for protecting your bonsai from Arctic winter blasts in your bonsai practice. If you found this video helpful and think it might help someone else, consider hitting the like button at the bottom of your screen and share it with your clubs, share it with your bonsai friends, share it with your bonsai community, because I think this info is really important to get out there so that we can keep as many bonsai safe as possible during the winter storms. I'm Andrew Robson. You've been watching RAKUYO's Deciduous Bonsai channel. Subscribe to the channel so we can keep you up to date with all of that wonderful deciduous knowledge moving forward. And don't be afraid to take some extra steps to protect your bonsai during your next winter storm.